And this is the second part of our today's discussions. And so from that, I'm going to call this meeting to order at 9:57. And I presume everybody has an agenda in front of them. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest with the county councilors today with regards to this agenda? Okay, hearing none. Moving on then. Our business arising from the minutes, we do have a notice of motion that has been presented from our last council meeting. And so I have it moved by Councillor Desai. And there is a seconder for your notice of motion, and I'm going to pass this over to Councillor Desai to speak to his notice of motion. Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So one of the things it's important to note, it says right in the motion there that an economically competitive agricultural industry provides affordable food and agricultural products to all Ontarians and is a provincial objective that should be cost shared amongst all of its citizens. The report from Wellington County goes on to show that the total shortfall in the land rebates that the county gives out and the OMPF that it receives in, and that's sort of the total from the lower tiers, comes out to about a shortfall of over $27 million. To put that in terms of Grey County, we would have to raise the levy approximately 54% in Grey County in order to raise the $27 million shortfall. There's not much to say about it. It's a pretty self-explanatory motion. The one question I do have, though, that's coming out of this is if it would be possible for staff to present the numbers that Wellington County has presented, but the Grey County perspective of those numbers, the Grey County equivalence of those numbers. So I guess my question through you to the CAO, Mr. Warden.
Madam CEO.
Looking at the work that Wellington County has done and provided in that staff report to council earlier, looking to Kevin, I would be very supportive if council's interested in seeing those numbers for us to work with our tax consultant and pull together something similar. Kevin, is that something that you feel we could get to over the next several weeks?
Yeah, no, I have spoken to Ken in the past about this, and I did put part of that in there with the lower tiers in the tax report. So I believe we can put that together.
So just going back to you, Kevin, before with regards to this policy, the farm tax rebate program, is it fair to say that this sort of has been in place for 20 years, 1998, the current system? And I don't know if you're able to elaborate on the system that we have in place today.
Yeah, it's gone through a couple phases from CRF to OMPF and stuff. Yeah, but like back in the day, originally these properties were taxed at the residential rate, and then the farmer applied for the rebate from the province, and then the province would fund it back. So, but then with the different programs and the way they've apportioned costs across the province, like Community Reinvestment Fund, the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, etc., they've ended up pushing this into the county. So I anticipate, and we'll put these numbers together for sure, I anticipate the pushback from the province will be the upload of social services costs that have occurred with the OMPF, that they'll say that's where they've helped these other municipalities is about. But I think it's worth looking at and raising the issue, though, to see where this goes.
But it is a provincial mandated program, which then is a provincial directive. And I think that's part of the argument maybe in the motion, that it should be across the board, even for those municipalities that don't have agricultural lands. And that's where I think the discrepancy maybe are in there. Councillor Burley, do you have anything to add? You are the seconder to the resolution. Just take yourself off mute.
Sorry about that. No, I support the motion 100%. I think it's well done, and I have nothing else to add.
Mr. Warden, I saw Councillor Millen's hand up.
Okay, Councillor Millen.
Hey, Mr. Warden. I don't know whether it's a sign of getting long in the tooth or what, I suppose it is. But I do recall and was part of the lobby from the Federation of Agriculture and the other farm groups to change the system from what Kevin described there a minute ago. Farmers paid the full, or farm property owners paid the full residential rate and then applied to the province. And it was taking 6-8 months to get the money back. So basically the farm property owners were providing a bridge loan to the province till they got the money back. It might be worthwhile to touch base with the Federation of Agriculture and see what their thoughts are on going back to that system, because essentially that's what we're asking, to see what their thoughts are, because a lot of time and effort was put into changing the system to what it is now, with the assurance from the province at the time that this would be a wash. And it certainly has evolved to not being a wash, although, as Kevin mentioned, there are extenuating programs that may or may not have leveled out the money. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see the numbers in the end.
So I guess that's, Councillor Millen, thanks for those comments. And I guess that's part of this, is to maybe take another look at this and you know, and I guess that's what we're for. And just what you're saying about the Grey County Federation, there is a meeting tonight. So between myself or Councillor Robinson, we'll make sure that this is placed on that agenda from the local part, and then it can be funneled up through the provincial body for sure. Okay,
Mr. Gordon,
so
we had Councillor Soever.
Councillor Soever, floor is yours.
Yes, so I'm happy to support this motion, but I think we should consult with the agricultural community. But I don't think it's necessarily means going back to the old system. When you look at a strip mall, if land was occupied by a strip mall, it would be taxed based on its income earning potential, and so it gets taxed on a different basis. So, you know, farmland, of course, is variable quality and all that, and I think that would be a very fair way of assessing that, is what is that income earning potential of that land. Obviously, you can have land side by side, one of which can grow a lot of crops and the other is a field of rocks. So I've seen that in a lot of places, particularly in Northern Ontario. You know, one guy's on the clay belt and the other's on the Canadian Shield. Well, you know, those are completely different valuations. So I think it really requires a whole review of how we do current value assessment. And I think that's what we could be looking at now. I have done a bit of research on this along with my treasurer, and initially it was the OMPF that was supposed to offset that shift for the counties, but over the years some weird things have happened with OMPF, where some urban centers or at least not urban but smaller communities that have very little farmland are actually getting far more OMPF per household than their neighbors with a lot of farmland. So I don't know what's happened there, but you know, certainly there's a lot to look at here.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor. So ever maybe a provincial task force just to, and I go back to Director of Financial Services Kevin Lepler there. I thought, if you Google it, I thought it goes back to 1998 when this new system through current value assessment was sort of reset. And but I could be off there a little bit. Just want to also point out to those that are watching, and I learned this from Councillor Robinson. If you want to see everybody in your screen and you only have 9 squares, take your finger and swipe it the other way, and then you see the other 9. So I learned that little trick. So I'm quite, you know, so this out there just to, you know, you were learning this electronics all the way. So Councillor Patterson, do you wish to speak? No. We're not hearing you, Councillor Patterson.
No, I'm good, thanks. I was just scrolling my screen.
Oh, you're trying it out. Good. All right. Are there any other discussions wish to bring brought up to this motion, Madam Clerk? Is there anybody on the chat?
Well, Mr. Warden, I wouldn't mind speaking at the appropriate time. It's Christine.
Okay, well, go ahead, Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. This is a timely resolution to consider. Certainly as the representative on the Grey Federation of Agriculture, it's an item that I will bring forward on the agenda. I'm wondering in terms of timing whether the appropriateness is that it go before Grey Federation of Agriculture. Also, as Councillor Milne has suggested, that the item go before Ontario Federation of Agriculture as part of stakeholder consultation before we actually pass this resolution. So we're really looking at grassroots participation of the target groups that are most effective. So I'm wondering if Council would consider just putting this on hold until the next Committee of the Whole meeting in order to seek consultation information from the effective groups.
Okay, then that's a question I'm going to take back to the mover and seconder. There's been a request that maybe put this on hold. Councillor Desai, do you have any comments to that?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I don't have any comments to it. And honestly, I was not expecting to be asked whether I'd be okay with deferring the motion or not. But I guess I don't see the point in deferring it because what we're asking of the provincial government is that we're looking for an equitable way to address this burden that currently only rural municipalities are facing. Because when a farmer produces crop, he's producing crop that's available to all Ontarians, not just to his or her particular community. So we're asking for some equity in that. So we're not saying go back to the old system or invent a new system. All we're saying is we would like to see some equity. I'm more than happy, for the OFA to take a look at the motion or come up with a system that might work or they think that could work, and then pass a separate motion at a later date saying we would like to see something like this implemented. But for now, for today's motion, we're asking for equity, and I don't know if it's something that needs to be deferred until the next meeting. But I mean, again, if I don't have a second, then I would hope it gets deferred.
So just looking at the bottom of the resolution, it does say now there be it resolved to conduct a review. So basically the support of this resolution is not giving direction, it's asking for the province to review this certain situation. But certainly, is it possible from the mover and seconder that also it's circulated for comments to the Grey County Federation of Ag and the Ontario Federation of Ag, or however that wording, so then they are certainly circulated, and maybe those comments could still come back collectively and parallel with regards to this going to the province. I'm going to go back to Councillor Robinson for your thoughts on that.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and certainly through you. And I note the intent of the resolution, and certainly that's fine in terms of a review. I'm just concerned with the absence of engagement of key stakeholders with regard to this resolution. I would suggest that the absence of that information and active participation from Grey Federation of Agriculture and Ontario Federation of Agriculture in advance of putting this forward might just be a misstep and more timely if we're able to have them engaged right at the beginning of the process. It's 2 weeks. We're meeting this evening. And we could also put it forward to the Federation. I think it's something that I would hope that our Grey County Council would consider. We're all about public consultation and engagement, and we've got something before us. So it just, to me, makes sense. It lends itself at a perfect time that we could put the resolution forward. There may be additional components or paragraphs to this resolution that the agricultural sector could contribute. So I
then
would
going,
be looking for a deferral.
okay, so are you moving that, Councillor Robinson then?
Yes, and I move that with respect. I understand the need for the review, and I do respect Councillor Desai bringing this forward. But at this time, I think, just in the process of public engagement and what the county is about in terms of receiving information from, our constituents, I think it's most appropriate for deferral at this time. So I will be moving it and respectfully ask that there's support for a seconder and a vote on this, please.
Councillor Hutchison is seconding your deferral. And just to tease that out, deferral, and I remember usually you like to have a bit of a time frame for that deferral, but part of your deferral is to seek information out from the Ontario Federation of Ag, is that correct?
Ontario Federation of Agriculture, Grey Federation of Agriculture, and I'd be looking at a 2-week time frame in the process cycle. I think that's adequate.
Okay, thank you. Madam
Thank
Clerk, anything else I need to do that deferral at this point?
No, you have your mover and seconder. We would put in the resolution that it be deferred until the May 28th Committee of the Whole meeting, and then it's up to council to decide whether they wish to have that deferral or not.
Thank you.
Okay. And any discussion on the deferral?
Yes, Mr. Warden, I'd like to.
Go ahead, Councillor
Thank you.
Desai.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I take quite well Councillor Robinson's comments on public consultation and so on. Having said that, we're not the ones doing the review here. We're asking a separate level of government to do the review. So the onus of public consultation or the body that should be doing the public consultation is the provincial body that should be doing that. That's not us. Our public consultation was when we had representatives from the associations come to council, ask for a change in the tax rates, and that was public consultation. We went ahead and we passed a motion to reduce the farm tax rate from 24 to 21.8. We're not the ones doing the review. We're asking another body to do the review. So I'm more than happy to add to the current motion or to the notice of motion that we circulated to the different federations of ag to get their comments and encourage them to send in their comments to the province as well. But I don't think we should be the ones doing the public consultation on this.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Mr.
Yes, go
Warden,
ahead.
I do have Councillor Millen and Councillor Burley as well.
Okay, Councillor Millen and Councillor Burley. Councillor Millen first.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I concur with Councillor Desai. I mean, the resolution says we're asking the province to conduct a review, and indeed they are the ones, as he said, that would be responsible for, asking different groups, the Federation and others, on what their thoughts are and how to change the system to make it more equitable. I don't see any point in asking anybody at this point what their thoughts are, because we're not the ones doing the review. So I'm not in favor of deferring it, and I won't be supporting the resolution.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Millen. And Councillor Burley?
Thank you, and Mr. Warden. All great comments. I see no need to defer this motion. I will still second the motion as for Councillor Desai. I do agree that we can add to the bottom of the motion to forward on to the ag societies and so on and so forth. I agree with that, but I see no point in deferring this motion at this time.
Okay, any other comments? Thank you for that, Councillor Burley. Any other comments from county councillors? Any further comment from Councillor Robinson?
So Councillor
So,
question as well. I'm sorry.
Oh, pardon me. Go ahead, Clerk Morrison.
Councillor Hicks
Yes,
has indicated a question.
I just saw him pop up there. So I'll come back to you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Hicks, Deputy Warden.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. I will be voting against the motion to defer. I do think that it's implicit in the resolution to review that there would be stakeholder engagement. So I think that there'll be plenty of opportunity for any person affected to have an opportunity to to be, consulted to give their input. So for that reason, I don't see the need for a deferral.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Hicks, Deputy Warden. Are there any other councillors wish to speak before I go back to the mover of the deferral? Okay, I hear none. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Warden. Well, through the discussion, and thank you for all the great comments. As Councillor Desai has suggested, if there could be the inclusion of the OFA and Grey Federation of Agriculture in the resolution for the consultation, just to amplify that they're part of the stakeholder engagement, I think we're achieving what I set out to do in terms of having those stakeholders involved in the process. So I will withdraw the deferral because I feel that with the addition of identifying those two stakeholders, I think it's achieving what we need. So thank you.
So, Madam Clerk, the motion was on the floor. Is it
Yes.
able to be withdrawn if the mover withdraws it, or does it have to be voted on?
Yes. So it can be withdrawn by the mover. And if council is interested in having an amendment to the notice of motion, that it be circulated to the Grey County Federation of Agriculture and the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, then we just need a mover and seconder for that amendment, and we would add it to the motion.
Okay, okay, so the notice of deferring that has been withdrawn. Is there
I
a new
see a
motion?
Councillor Desai.
Councillor Sy and Councillor Burley. I got Councillor Burley's hand up there. Okay, so that's an amendment to the motion.
Thank you.
And I just wonder to the mover and seconder if that should also include the National Farmers Union and what's the other one, Councillor
Christian Farmers Union.
Christian Farmers, just to be unified, because there are two other provincially recognized farm groups out there for sure. Is that okay? Is that a friendly amendment to both Councillor
That's
Desai?
okay with me.
Okay, so there's the amendment.
If I might,
Go ahead, Councillor Millen.
I haven't actually seen, or I don't remember seeing the actual original motion from Mapleton, but they may have already circulated these groups that you're listing. I don't know, Madam Clerk, do you have a copy of the original motion?
Tara's just looking now, but neither of us recall seeing any of the agricultural associations in that original motion.
Okay. Does it hurt, Councillor Millen, to repeat that if that's okay, or?
I'm sorry, Mr. Warden.
No, just in case it has to be in there. Is it okay if we just repeat it anyway? I don't see that being a problem.
That's fine with me.
Okay. Good. Okay, thank you. So we have an amended motion. Any other discussion on the amended?
So we're voting just on the amendment to add the agricultural associations to circulation. And then we'll vote on the main motion as amended.
That's right. So that was moved by Councillor Desai and Councillor Burley for the amendment. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Are there any opposed to the amendment motion? I determine that to be carried. So now that rolls into the main motion. And again, that was moved by Councillor Desai and Councillor Burley. Any further discussion on the main motion? Okay, I hear none. Any opposed to that motion that's on the floor? Hearing no opposition, that motion is carried. Okay, thank you everyone for that.
Mr. Warden, I just will note that Councillor Gamble has joined us.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for that. So now we are full complement. Okay, so moving on to our agenda, and welcome Councillor Gamble. Moving on then, determination of items requiring separate discussion. I don't see any there. We have a consent agenda that was moved by Councillor Patterson and Councillor Carlton. Are there any items on that consent agenda that wish to be pulled or to be spoken to at a later part of the meeting?
I see Councillor Soever's hand.
Councillor Soever?
I would like to pull item F, the lease financing report, and item H, the development charges reserve fund statement.
Okay, I've made note of that. So that's F and H. All right. Are there any other ones wish to be pulled? Okay, I hear none. So then again, that was again moved by Councillor Patterson, Councillor Carleton. Any opposed to that motion that's on the floor? Hearing none, that is carried. We'll come back to that in a later part of our agenda then for F and H for Councillor Soever. So then items for discussion, and that's moved by Councillor Keaveney and second by Councillor Desai, and this is with regards to the SWIFT request for loan guarantee, and I'm passing this over to our Madam CAO. Madam CAO, can you speak to this, please?
I can, Mr. Warden. Good morning, Council. The purpose of this report is to obtain council support for Grey County to enter into a loan guarantee agreement in support of our portion of the third phase of the SWIFT projects. The third phase of SWIFT is a more than a $150 million investment with 11 projects taking place in 14 municipalities. The original SWIFT funding model under the Small Communities Fund program was made up of contributions at 31.25% from each of the federal government, province, and the private sector internet service providers, with the municipalities responsible for just over 6%. With the information that we have available to us today, we know that Grey County has invested $1.08 million into SWIFT and will leverage an infrastructure investment exceeding $15 million in projects in the county when this goes forward. The loan guarantee is necessary to ensure that SWIFT has the cash flow it needs to undertake these projects. Since October of 2019, there were changes to the Construction Act that require construction invoices to be paid within 28 days. And SWIFT's experience to date has been that it takes about 4 months to receive reimbursement from the province and federal government when they submit their invoices for reimbursement. In addition, the funding agreement, the SCP funding agreement, imposes a standard 10% holdback on each claim, and it will be several months after the entire phase 3 project is complete before those funds are available to SWIFT. So the amount that we're being asked to guarantee, $2.929 million, is our proportionate share of the total $27.5 million that SWIFT needs for cash flow purposes. The loan guarantee will be, or the funds will be made available through TD. TD was selected through a competitive process to provide financing at a previous phase in the project and is anticipated to do so again for this phase. Staff don't see any significant risks to the county for entering into this loan guarantee. The funds that are required to complete the projects are already in place. And SWIFT is a nonprofit organization or corporation owned by the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus municipalities, and so we're not in a bonusing situation. The resolution before you is a little bit lengthy, and just for your information, originally there was an ask that came to us to do a non-binding letter of intent with the loan guarantee to follow. But as a group, the Western Wardens CAOs felt that we really wanted to bring the letter of intent to council's attention, and then rather than having this discussion on 2 separate agendas, it was determined it would be more efficient and transparent to bring both items together at this time. So what we're asking is for your support to execute the non-binding letter of intent at this time, and the loan guarantee documents when those become available. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Are there any questions to our CAO from county councilors?
Councillor Mackey, and I see Councillor Soever's hand up.
Okay, Councillor Mackey, you go first, and then Councillor Soever. Go ahead, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mr. Warden, and thanks for the report, Kim. In your report, you had the map of the areas within Grey County that we're going to receive additional service. The areas that already have service, we've heard that the service is spotty and limited. does SWIFT will they be looking at expanding the area within Grey County that they may provide additional service? So that's one question. And when can, our investment, when will we start to see, some actual speed increases for the users? We heard that we were going to be third on the list. I'm just wondering if that's changed and if there's any timelines that you can share with us. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks,
Okay,
Council. Through you, Mr. Warden, under the agreement with the province and the federal government, SWIFT is bound to provide service or entertain projects, I think would be a more correct way to say that, for areas that do not have that 50-10 service available. So if the 50-10 exists, SWIFT cannot put a project in that place. Their due diligence, SWIFT's due diligence, looks at the service providers who feel that they are providing that service. And my understanding is the due diligence that they undertake is quite comprehensive. We have had questions through the last number of months as this project has come together. We have referred those back to SWIFT to ensure that, in fact, what the ISPs are claiming is actually true. And I believe in all cases that they have been able to satisfy the requirements. My own assessment of the situation is that once an area is serviced, that's when the belief is that the private sector then can step in and do what it does as far as competition, right? So if somebody's done the legwork to establish a market and provide service to a particular area, they've established a price point to deliver those services. I think that then doorway is then open to other private sector providers who may feel that they can provide that service more cost effectively and then go in and then there's competition in the market. What SWIFT is set up to do is to provide services where none exists and where the market might not be substantial enough to really expect that any one provider is going to go and take the risk and make those significant investments without a lot of additional support, which is why you end up with that essentially one-third cost share to make those investments.
Councilor Mackey, do you have anything? Thank you, Madam CEO. Do you have anything to add to that before I go on to Councilor Swever?
No, thanks very much, Kim. I guess the one other question is, are there any timelines in place right now when Grey County may expect to see some increased levels of service?
SWIFT is also bound on its communication abilities. The province and the federal government reserve the right to make some announcements here, and until such time as they're able to do that, we're kind of embargoed on the communication. I can only tell council that a tremendous amount of work has gone into this so far, so I expect that we will be hearing something very shortly.
Okay, thanks, Councilor Mackey. I don't know if you have any further questions. Moving on to then Councilor Swever. Thanks,
yes, I'm just wondering why we're being asked to provide this guarantee. Essentially, we're being asked to guarantee a upper level government receivable because, the SWIFT, it's just a timing issue, and the minute the work is done, then the amount under the agreements with the federal and provincial government is due. So we're being asked to guarantee what essentially is an upper level government receivable. And those kind of loan, that has very little risk. But then why does the TD Bank want that, or is demanding, I assume, because otherwise it wouldn't be before us, us to provide an additional guarantee? Because bank loans to government entities, actually have a lower capital coverage requirement than just a standard loan to me or you for a car or a mortgage. So, this is a very low risk loan, and the legislation actually doesn't require the bank to have much capital to cover it. And yet we're being asked by SWIFT to provide an additional guarantee. So either there's an issue with how tough they were in negotiating. This sounds like it was a tender process. So I would have thought that in the tender, they would have said no additional guarantees, because this will be eating into our borrowing capacity, not in a huge way, but still, it seems to me there's an issue here of how well this whole thing was negotiated, because you shouldn't need an additional guarantee on an upper level government receivable. So, I have a real problem with this. And on the larger issue of SWIFT, I think it's very good that we're trying to get high speed to our underserviced rural areas, but I've had several meetings with both large and small internet providers, and they will be bidding on some of these, but they're going to bid on, if you look at the projects that have been completed in phases 1 and 2, they're largely in fairly high density neighborhoods. They're not out in the middle of nowhere, because ultimately SWIFT puts these projects out to tender, and people are not interested in bidding where you have 1 or 2 potential customers, because the cost of making the bid, you'll never recoup that by billing 2 customers. You'd have to bill them for 10 years to get even the cost of preparing the bid back, never mind providing the service. So, I think there's larger questions. Our council has asked that SWIFT appear before us to answer some of these, and we're still waiting. So, I have a lot of questions about this, because I don't know why we're being asked to guarantee something that we shouldn't be needing to guarantee.
Okay, well, thank you, Councillor Schweber. You're raised some good points. Madam CEO, do you have any conversation or further comments with regards to those points?
I was not part of the negotiations with TD, and so I'm really not in a position to speak to their requirements and why those requirements exist.
But other counties are also doing the same thing.
This same process was used in phase 2, and now again in phase 3.
Okay. Can anybody else share? I don't know, Councillor Hicks, Deputy Warden, I know you're on that board. I don't know if you have anything to add or not from that. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I just thought maybe if you had anything to add.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Warden. I can certainly add some information. I want to go back to Councillor Mackey's question a little bit, and perhaps just indicate that there's a bit of a debate about what type of service SWIFT ought to be advocating for, and we're wrestling with that issue right now. The word fiber is in the name SWIFT, so it sort of lends to us advocating for fiber. However, the province dictates otherwise. The province says, regardless of how you provide that, whether it be cable or fiber or wireless, if you can meet that 50-10 and you can show that, then that's an area that SWIFT has to stay away from. So that is sort of dictating that territorial thing. I think that many of the people on the SWIFT board would love to see fiber everywhere. But the province is saying, no, we want to use our funding. We want the funding to be used for those areas that don't and can't get 50-10. And that's the standard, and they don't indicate how. So that's dictating a little bit that whole controversy that you may be seeing around territory and area. On Councillor Schweber's question about the people who are submitting bids seem to be going for those more highly populated areas. I think that you can't really fight that. The proponents are always going to go for the low-hanging fruit. What the hope is that as we address some of those less populous areas, so right now, you know, your Owen Sounds, your Hanovers, places like that are going to have adequate service. So they're not going to be even a consideration for a SWIFT project. But as these internet service providers begin to branch out and provide service to others, then those people along a rural road become sort of that last mile entity that we would need to address. And it would be easier to get to those people if the other infrastructure is already in place. I should point out that as part of the process of making decisions about where projects are going to go, the County of Grey does have the ability to sort of influence the types of projects that might go in. So philosophically, are we looking to get the most people connected, or are we philosophically interested in getting the hardest to serve people connected? And we can say we would like you know, a certain percentage to go towards difficult to reach clients, more so than numbers of customers served. Everybody loves to see, oh, we've invested this amount of money and we got this amount of customers connected, and that looks really good. But you know, if it takes an X amount of dollars to get it down a rural road and you're only servicing perhaps 5 or 6 farms, that's very important to those farmers, perhaps with businesses that rely on good broadband. However, you know, when you look at the numbers, you say, my God, you spent all this money and you only reached, you know, X amount of people. So that's a debate. We have an opportunity, each county has an opportunity to influence that decision as the project is rolled out. What else was I going to say? I think that's it for now, unless there are other questions.
So just before you go, Councillor Hicks, Deputy Warden, there was a question with regards to the representative coming to speak to County Council. I know it has been talked through, and I know it's been delayed a bit. I guess, is there any insight of when? I think it's Barry. Is it Barry, his name?
If I may, Mr. Warden, yes, Barry Field will come and speak with council as soon as he is able to do so, when that communication embargo has been lifted by the province.
Right. Yeah.
While we were listening here, Joni McEachern also brought a good point to my attention that I neglected to say, which is that there is part of SWIFT's due diligence and assessment is that return on investment timeline for a particular project. And SWIFT also, they don't fund things that are already serviced. They also don't fund projects where there is an immediate return on investment. So they do need to demonstrate that they are fulfilling an unmet and unlikely to be met in the short-term need in order to qualify for these resources.
Okay, thank you, Madam CEO. Councillor Deputy Warden, do you have anything else to add? I see you switched from orange juice to apple juice today. And
yes, yes. The only thing that I would add is, you know, I would love to be able to tell you everything that I know, but I can't. Just know that we are walking on eggshells in terms of communication. The province is a partner, and we have entered into you know, an understanding and an arrangement with them about how we will communicate and when we will communicate. So we have to respect that process. So read through the lines that there is much that I know and would love to say, but can't. And we are walking on eggshells to a certain extent in terms of that communication. Would love to be able to tell you a lot more, but we can't do that until the province has had a chance to make their announcements first.
you keep drinking apple juice and that'll support the town of Blue Mountains.
So Mr. Warden, I have a few that are interested in speaking. Director Wepler, and then Councillors Woodbury, Robinson, and Potter.
So just before I go there, I want to go back to Councillor Sweber if there's a follow-up question from his comments that have been made. Councillor Sweber, is there anything? And then I'll go to Mr. Wepler.
No, I'll wait to hear the discussion of the others, see if anything comes up.
Okay, so Mr. Wepler, do you wish to speak then?
Yeah, just a couple of things that have changed with payment process and stuff is another thing I think it's impacting SWIFT here. In the past, and I wasn't, like Kim said, we were not part of negotiations, but in the past, a lot of times you'd see cash flow in advance, you'd get % of the project funding in advance, and et cetera. As well, the Construction Lien Act, there was Bill 69 that was amended, which requires payment to your vendors within 28 days of a proper invoice, which has put pressure on SWIFT now to cash flow this money before they get a claim processed by the upper levels of government. So that's all I had to add to this.
So I think just before we go to Councillor Robinson, so I think back to you, Madam CEO, a lot of this is a flow through, it's sort of just to make sure that the respectable contractors are paid in a timely manner that you mentioned, Mr. Wepler, and so it's just more or less a tool to keep that going, I presume. Councillor Robinson and then Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Warden McQueen, and through you, I will be supporting the motion before us. As Grey County Council, we need to do everything we can to support broadband in Grey County to facilitate just the absolute need for our residents, our agricultural society, our students, our business owners. So this is infrastructure that is very much needed in Grey County. So the support is necessary. I just would like to have more of a discussion in terms of the interactive map that was attached to the report. And certainly our Grey County residents are waiting very patiently for the underserviced areas to be serviced. And I wonder if Madam CAO could just provide a bit more dialogue on that. I do appreciate that you and I spent some time talking about it, and but for the benefit of those listening in on this meeting and those that will be referring to this meeting, will have a bit of a reference. Just that we have pockets of serviced areas in Grey County, even in the urban small settlement areas within the smaller rural areas of Grey County, but that there is an availability for service through SWIFT to achieve broadband for the overarching areas that are not serviced at this time. And the other comment I'd want to make is that I would hope that SWIFT would look at not only the numbers so that broadband could be achieved to a greater number of individuals in or households or businesses in Grey County, but also on the harder service areas. So I think a balance needs to be achieved in attention to both of those areas of concern. So Madam CAO, through you, would you be able to provide more of a drilled down perspective on the unserviced areas of Grey County that would be part of this phase 3, please?
Madam CEO.
Okay, through you, Mr. Warden. So for those listening at home, it's swiftbroadband.ca is where you can find the project page for SWIFT. And then under the resources tab, there's a service map. When you look at the service map, it speaks to places that have broadband available and those that do not have 5010 service available to them. So the places that are serviced show up on the map as blue, and those that are unserviced don't have any shading on them. So when I look at Grey County specifically within that service map, what you see is services available around the city of Owen Sound, across Highway 26 towards Meaford, and along the shoreline of Meaford and Town of the Blue Mountains. There's a significant portion of Grey County in the Great Highlands and Southgate area that has 5010 service, as well as like the town of Durham, Hanover, Ayton, and Neustadt all show as having service. But beyond those settlement areas. There's a really a wide swath of Grey County that does not have 50-10 at this time.
Okay, Councillor Robinson, is anything more you wish to add?
Well, thank you, Madam CAO, for that. I very much appreciate it. So it's those underserviced areas that will be the focus of SWIFT's attention. Is that correct?
Those are the areas that are eligible for projects, yes.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. And next I go to Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you, just a couple of comments, which I hope to keep brief, but I just, Councillor Mackey already talked about and asked about my question about the timeline. I don't know why we don't have guarantees of some sort about when this will all be done. It seems to be going on forever. And we get questions all the time about when are we actually going to get broadband service. We have seniors, we have school children, we have businesses, we have farmers who really need to have this service available. It's an important, and as Councillor Robinson just said, it's a vital part of the infrastructure. It's beginning to make me wonder whether SWIFT is really the best way to do it, or whether there's something better, because we seem to spend a lot of money and I'm not sure what we're getting. Which brings me to my next point, which is transparency. We're told nudge, nudge, wink, wink, something's coming, but we're not told what. And I need more than that. I don't think that going back to our ratepayers and saying, oh, something's coming, is really going to work with them. We need to know that something is going to be delivered and reasonably soon. And finally, the question of where SWIFT should be working and who it should be serving. I don't think it should be up to SWIFT to worry about new subdivisions. I think it should be up to SWIFT to be the ones to push to get broadband service onto the rural roads and onto those underserviced areas and down farm roads where there aren't that many properties. That's what we need them for. We don't need them to put broadband service into the populated areas. We need them to work on those underserviced areas. So I think I can get off the soapbox now, but I do think this is a very vital project and we need it to get moving.
Mr. Warden?
So, yeah, go ahead.
I think Councillor Potter's comments are very well taken. They are comments that I've heard at the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus table. I think the appropriate audience for those comments is the province and the federal government. The terms of the agreement that allowed us to have access to these funds were the terms that were provided to us by the province and by the federal government. And so the more that we can provide our concerns and our requirements to them, I think the more likely it is that we'll see some of these requirements adjusted for future phases.
So I just want to remind thank you for that, Madam CEO, that the part of this motion is it's part of a tool of moving forward with this. The details are going to be coming when the province releases the certain information that allows then, I guess, Barry to come and speak to us as how this is rolling out. So again, I just want to bring this back that the discussion, it's good discussion, good information, but part of this is the part of the big piece, or it's a piece of the big part, I guess you could say, that allows us to move forward. And I just want to reiterate this part of that motion. Councillor Potter, did you have anything to follow up on that from Madam CEO?
No, and I thank the CAO for her answer, but I noticed Councillor Woodbury who should have probably been in ahead of me, is still waving his hand.
Okay, I got to swing my screen over.
So, Mr. Warden, I do have Councillor Woodbury and I have Councillor Hicks, and I will just let you know that Councillor O'Leary has had to leave the meeting.
Oh, okay. So sorry about that, Councillor Woodbury. I didn't switch my screen and see you waving there, but the floor is yours.
No problem. Just to get back to some of the areas that are called serviced. In the south end of the county, there are some areas that are said to be serviced, but what they're serviced with is towers and Wi-Fi that are not affordable. And so that although technically under what the province says, Councillor Hicks is absolutely right, we're listed as being serviced, but we're not. We're serviced for a select few. So that's one of the battles that is still uphill, and the townships that are involved with that may need the county's support and more going forward. And it has to do more with unrealistic costs that people just can't afford. Thanks.
So thanks, Councillor Woodbury. And I guess I know Councillor Hicks is to speak next, and just following up with Councillor Woodbury, will there be more discussion? And I know you can't say it right now, but will there be more discussion with the increases of moving forward, or is being sort of communicated here? The province has sort of laid out the roadmap, as Madam CEO said, so maybe we're somewhat restricted to the ability of us moving forward, only with the part is it's 50-10. And I'll leave it at that. Councillor Hicks, Deputy Warden, you wish to speak next?
So thank you, Mr. Warden. A few things. I think that the debate with respect to should it be fiber, should it be affordable, the only criteria that we have is that if an area is currently serviced by 50-10, SWIFT cannot touch it. Addressing Councillor Robinson's comments, I think she's hit the nail on the head when she says we have to try to find that right mix between, you know, people reached and hard to serve clients that have been reached, and that's not a simple formula to come up with. We do get some input into that, but I can tell you it's not a simple debate, because no matter which way you go, if you say we're only going to try to reach difficult to serve properties, then we'll be criticized as saying, well, geez, you reached 50 properties or maybe 100, and you spent all this money and only reached 100 people. And if we only go towards the low-hanging fruit and go for the most bang for the dollar, then we get criticized and say, but what did you do for that farmer down that rural road? You haven't really reached those difficult people, have you? So I think that's a really tough debate that we have to wrestle with. Give you an example. What are we getting to answer Councillor Potter's question? We're getting about 10 times our investment in terms of what's going to be put into the ground. So for every dollar we put in, we're going to get back a multiplier of about 10. So that's significant for us. I would just, in terms of digging down a little deeper, Councillor Robinson wondered if we could give some example. First of all, we are only mandated to serve underserved areas. So again, SWIFT has nothing to do with the areas that have service. So it's not about, Ayton or Hanover or Owen Sound or anything like that. It's only going to be addressing projects in underserviced areas. That's all we have a mandate to do. So I want to make that clear. To give an example, there's about 4,800 kilometers of road in Grey County, and underserviced roads would be about 2,900 kilometers. SWIFT is not the silver bullet. SWIFT is not going to be the be-all and end-all to get to all of that. If we look at what is proposed for phase 3, we will address through our projects about 329 kilometers of fiber. So when you look at that in terms of the percentage of underserviced property, SWIFT is not the be-all and end-all. So I think the need for advocacy still exists. We still need to tell the province, look, if you're going to be rolling out things like education via internet, you've got to put that infrastructure in place, and SWIFT alone is not going to address the problem. So I don't want people to have this expectation that SWIFT is going to come along and boom, the answer is going to be provided. Not at all. And advocacy still needs to happen around issues with the province about, you know, the speed, about if you want to know about things like, you know, affordability. So it's not enough to just say that it's 50-10, but is it 50-10 affordable? Those types of issues, I think the province is still very much dictating, and we can advocate for those types of things. But SWIFT is going to be an important project. It's going to get the ball rolling. It's very much needed, but it's not the silver bullet.
Oh, thank you very, very much for that, Councillor Hicks, Deputy Warden, because I know that it has been a great discussion, and I think it's good that you clarify that it's not all fiber, where it's about 50. Where's my clock? It's about 50-10, and I think I don't know, Councillor Woodbury, did you have any follow-up questions there? Because I know that I think Councillor Hicks, Deputy Warden, had a great display of information there. So I don't know if you have anything further on that, Councillor Woodbury.
No, just thanks for the work that's being done. And like I said, some of the southern areas that are said to be serviced but aren't affordable, the townships may be looking to the county for support on going to the province about that type of thing. Thanks for the work that's being done.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Woodbury. And Councillor Potter, did you have any follow-up? Because I know you had asked a question, and I'll go to Councillor Schweber next. Councillor Potter, did you have any further with that? That was a great explanation from Councillor Hicks.
It was, but then it leaves me wondering how much more money we're going to have to spend on other programs to do whatever gaps are left behind by SWIFT. But I think that's a topic for another day.
I remember not that many years ago when we used to have dial-up. And how we've came a long way. So I think as a society, we probably will continue to improve our system. And as we know, more and more demands on internet, and holy smokes, if we get the 5G, I'm not sure it'll be just the larger areas. We I can't see that in the foreseeable future at this point. Councillor Schweber, did you have a comment?
Yes, I think, you know, I'm all in favor of increasing rural broadband, and but I do have concerns that we're now being asked to guarantee a loan on basically another government receivable. It speaks to mismanagement, and like there should be no way that the TD Bank was granted, you know, that other level of protection, because it's a low risk venture, and there's a very competitive lending environment out there. I mean, banks are looking for places to lend money, and lending it against the government receivable is one of the best things they could find. And yet somehow it was negotiated that they asked for a loan guarantee from another government. So now you've got basically 3 levels of government involved. So how much more protection do they need? So I'm very concerned about, you know, the competency here, and that's why I'm going to vote against it.
So I guess it just may be a question to Madam CEO or Director of Finance, Kevin Whippler. Councillor and Deputy Warden Hicks says we're getting 10 times our money. Is it fair to say that this is the cost of doing the business of getting that 10 times the money? I see all the other counties are also being asked the same request for guaranteeing. It can, I don't know if you had any, can add anything, Madam CEO?
All I can say is that I'm sorry that this didn't come up earlier. I would have certainly followed up with both Barry and potentially with TD to get the answer that Councillor Schweber is looking for. We need to provide the guarantee in order for the project to proceed. That is the situation that we find ourselves in. I can certainly get more information about why it's being asked for, but as I said earlier, we were not part of these negotiations, and I can't speak to the rationale for why it's being requested.
Okay, and I know Kevin Whippler, do you have any, Mr. Whippler, do you have anything to add to that?
Just on the return you're talking about, if you look at the letter of intent, what's quoted in there, if these numbers are correct, is they're showing a funding amount to Grey County of almost $16 million from the $1 million investment we made. So that's what's quoted in that letter of intent that's attached to the report.
So instead of 10 times, it's 16 times.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's, and I guess to you, Councillor Hicks, Deputy Warden, just to maybe assure county councillors, were you part of the initial discussions or part of the bigger picture that you can't reveal at this time, but maybe just to add comfort to the council here, can you add any more to that part of the comfort level of you being at the table?
I don't have much to add to the discussion at this point. I can't address any more the question that's been raised by Councillor Suever.
Okay. I think unless there's any new points or discussion, I think we need to move on with this motion that's on the floor. Any new points to be raised from county councillors that hasn't been raised at this point?
Councillor Robinson indicated she had a final comment, Mr. Warden.
Okay, Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was wondering if County Council would consider either putting an additional clause in this resolution or voting on separately that Grey County Council advocate quite briskly to the provincial and federal government for the enhancement of broadband in Grey County. We've heard the discussion in terms of what SWIFT is able to do, and I'm very pleased that we're moving along with that, and thank you for the due diligence in that. But there was also discussion in terms of the provincial and federal partners' involvement, and certainly through a roundtable discussion at the lower tier at West Grey, there was comments in terms of the support from both those orders of government. But overall, as a county, I think we should provide a letter of support and encouragement to the county, rather as the county, to federal and provincial government to just focus on broadband here in Grey County. So as Madam CAO or Madam Clerk could advise whether that should be part of this resolution or a separate motion. Thank you.
Madam CEO, and then I'm saying it should be a separate, but go ahead, Madam CEO or Madam Clerk.
What I was going to say is, if it didn't come to you yesterday, there are letters going out from Western Ontario Wardens Caucus to the federal government, to the province on this specific topic. We know that additional broadband resources and new projects are certainly top of mind with both levels of government, and Western Ontario Wardens, working closely with the Eastern Ontario Caucus, is advocating strongly to see those resources come to us in a very timely manner. I might suggest that when we are in receipt of those letters, that we can add them to the agenda as correspondence and then pass a resolution really emphasizing our support for that direction, if that would be okay.
And okay, I don't see an indication from Madam Clerk, and then I'll go to Councillor Robinson.
Madam CAO said exactly what I was thinking, is when we have those letters, we will certainly add them to an agenda, and they can be discussed at that point, and council can make the decision to move forward on that.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Robinson.
Absolutely, looking for process, and certainly if Grey County Council is in a position where they could provide a letter of support as well, but in concert with those letters that will be put on the agenda, that is the good process to go through. Thank you.
Yep. Yes. That sounds like a plan down the road for sure. And this is with regards to an agreement. Seeing there's no further comments, this is moved by Councillor Keaveney, second by Councillor Desai. Is there anybody opposed to this motion wish to indicate that? Councillor Suever?
I'm opposed.
Okay, anybody else opposed to this resolution?
I will oppose it too.
Councillor Potter? Okay, anybody else opposed to this resolution? I'm hearing 2 opposed. This motion is carried. So I think at this time, we'll take a break. I'm seeing 11:07 on my computer. Can we come back at 11:20? Does that work for everyone? Okay, so we'll take a recess to 11:20. Thank you. And shut your mics off. Recording there. I'll call our meeting back to order here in about 5 seconds. So welcome back, County Council, and I hope everybody took the advantage of that little break. So moving forward on our agenda, we have item B with regards to the Social Services Relief Fund and COVID related housing initiatives. And I have this moved by Councillor Mackey and second by Councillor Woodbury. And it's now on the floor, and I'm going to go to Anne Marie for some summary comments. Anne Marie, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and good morning, County Council. This report is just an update on the social services relief funds that we received from the province. The funds are to be used through our community homelessness prevention initiative. So they are for people that are at risk of homelessness or experiencing homelessness, or that are supported by our nonprofit or our own housing. The service manager, which of course we are the service manager for County of Grey, we play the leadership role in determining where the funds will be used and ensuring that agencies and people receive the funds that they need. The funds can be used for initiatives such as emergency housing, food and supplies, protective equipment, enhancing cleaning services, and also for future uses such as an isolation center. We had a total allocation given to us by the province for 2.3 million. We have received 50% of that to date. I did provide a chart on what the allocations have been. I just want to mention that the expense is actually money that we have had put out the door, and committed is money that we know is going to be going out the door. A lot of the funds that we have right here too, some of the agencies had not got back to us, for example, the Y with expenses for April as of the time that this report was written. So that number is a little bit lower than what it is or what it should be. Just to go over a few things, we have been communicating with all of our partners that we fund through our community enhancement funds, but also other partners that provide services to some of our most vulnerable people in our residents. We have provided a support for community agencies. We did put a call out for funding, and we are still receiving applications for that. One good example is OSHARE. OSHARE normally provides about 500 meals a week. And I was talking to their executive director last week. And as for March and April, they actually provided 11,000 meals. And kudos to them for being able to step up and provide those services at this time too. We have reached out to some of our housing with related supports, so our DOM hostels such as Second Avenue Lodge, just to see how we can help with extra funds. So staffing, cleaning, PPE supplies. We're working closely with Y Housing. We've seen a large increase in the use of our housing, our emergency housing right now. As of yesterday, we are supporting 23 people right now through emergency housing throughout the county. We do have the capacity for up to 70. So again, we're keeping an eye on those numbers. We did open a reception center. This is a collaboration between Grey Bruce Public Health, Canadian Mental Health Association, Safe and Sound, and the county. The center is in downtown Owen Sound, and it is starting to get used. We're having people coming in asking questions about COVID-19 and other services and referrals being made. We have connected with our paramedics, and if there is someone at the center that is showing signs of COVID and does need to be tested, they are able to provide that service for us on the spot. So that's a great asset for us. We do have an isolation center that is set up. It is at the Sydenham campus, and this would be if we do have maybe an outbreak or maybe some people that are in congregate living that need it, or if we do have a large group of people that have nowhere to isolate because they do not have anywhere to live at this point, that is available. And we're also looking into a rent benefit and some other programs probably as we move along. The funds that you have in front of you are the ones that I've listed in the chart. Those are really just for the first few months. These funds are to be used, of course, until the end of the year, with more funding available in July and more in September. We don't really have a good idea of what recovery is going to look like at this point, but we do know that funds are going to be needed in order for us to move through the rest of the year. I also added some of the housing initiatives that we've been providing to our tenants and to nonprofit tenants, and some of the actions and supports for people that are experiencing homelessness within our communities. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you very much for the Anne Marie, and wow, 11,000 meals. Wow. Any questions from county councilors to Anne Marie's report with regards to all the great things that are happening?
I see Councillor Millen.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Millen.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Anne Marie, I note that about 185,000 is not allocated yet. Is that, or do you anticipate that those funds will be soaked up by the programs and the initiatives that are already listed, or do you think there'll be no more programs initiated over the coming months?
So we have we are still receiving applications. So I just did a little bit of a cutoff date when I did this report. So since then we have received more applications for funds. We're still receiving them. So that's what those funds are to be put towards for more community agencies that require funding. We also know places like O'Share are going to require more funding. That $50,000 with 11,000 meals in 2 months isn't going to be significant either. So I will continue to bring updates as we move forward as to where the funding's been spent.
Thank you very much for that. And I do appreciate your efforts, because it must be very trying to deal with this kind of stuff. Given the COVID-19 issues, it's tough enough as it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Millen. Are there any comments there?
Councillor Soever.
Councillor Soever, go ahead.
Yes, and thank you, Anne Marie, for the support. And on behalf of Reverend Bocott of the St. Anglican Church in the town of Blue Mountains, I'd like to thank you for the $10,000 for the food programs. The church, in cooperation with Chef Jean Knight, delivers about 40 prepared meals to seniors who have difficulty preparing their own meals, and also have difficulty going shopping in this time. You know, a lot of these people are compromised and do not want to go to the grocery store. And then the new program, which is the Village School Meal Program, right now there's about 20 families representing about 50 people that usually the kids participate in the BBO lunch or the breakfast program. But obviously, since the schools are closed, and a lot of these people are living on the margin anyway, so that's another 20 families that are served by this new program. So thank you very much to the county for sending that money to Reverend Bocott. I know he's very appreciative.
Thank you for that, Councillor Soever. Are there any other comments? I guess to you, Anne Marie, and maybe through our communication director, Rob Hatton, these are all good news story parts of your report. Are we sharing this, or how do we put this out here in the sense of showing that, you know, there's some great things happening with all these different parts of that sector? And I don't know if you have any comment there, Anne Marie.
Well, it's certainly something that we can do. When we did receive the funds, one of the ways we put it out there was through the media so that people would be aware of it and on our website. So just receiving the funds itself was a great story, but it's certainly something we can look at doing some follow-up. Yeah, definitely we can.
Well, I just think it just shows that there is a caring aspect to all those that are in need. And it's great to see that the number of areas that are being supported through the funnel down approach and that. So again, I think that's a good news story that I think it would be great for us to share and show that we're a caring community and we're being Canadians. So there you go. All right, so the motion's on the floor for this report. Any other further comments? Any opposed to the resolution that's on the floor? Okay, hearing none, that is carried. Thank you again, Anne-Marie. Moving on now to our next report. This is with regards to the overview of the Planning Act changes and processing applications during the pandemic. And this is from Randy Switzer, and it's moved by Councillor Mackey and seconded by Councillor Hicks. So the motion is on the floor. Randy, are you there?
Hello, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
The purpose of this report is to provide an overview of some of the recent changes made to the Planning Act, as well as outlining a process for how county staff plan to continue to process planning applications during the pandemic. So the province passed Bill 189, which is called the Coronavirus Support and Protection Act. And this bill amends a number of acts, including the Planning Act. And with respect to the Planning Act, it essentially gave the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing the ability to make regulations to respond to municipal concerns about planning decisions and timelines during the provincial emergency period. In response to that, the Minister approved Ontario Regulation 149/20, which came into effect on April 15th of this year. And this regulation provides special rules for planning-related matters during the provincial emergency period. The province released a bulletin as well, which provides some clarity on the changes made to the Planning Act, as well as provide some clarity with respect to this new regulation. Now, I'll just highlight some of the changes made by this regulation. The first is the new regulation clarified that Ontario Regulation 73/20 under the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act does not apply to land use planning matters. And this was a regulation that was passed at the beginning of the pandemic, which caused some confusion over what Planning Act timelines were impacted by that previous regulation. Some municipalities felt that only timelines that related to appeal matters were impacted. Some municipalities in the province felt that all timelines were impacted. So this regulation clarifies that OREG 73/20 does not impact any timelines with respect to land use planning matters. As a result of the confusion and misinterpretation caused by that previous regulation, the new regulation passed outlines how municipalities should treat any decisions and notice of decisions that were made within that period of time. For example, any notice of decisions issued between February 26, 2020 and April 15, 2020 need to be reissued no later than 15 days from the end of the provincial emergency period. What this means is that the previous decision still stands, but notice of decision needs to be reissued, which restarts the appeal clock. So this impacts County Official Plan Amendment number 1, being the Housekeeping Official Plan Amendment, Local Official Plan Amendment number 8 in West Grey, known as JT Excavating, and Local Official Plan Amendment number 24 in Southgate, known as Southgate Grains. Since that time, the county staff have reissued those notice of decisions for those amendments, and the new last date for appeal is May 21st. So if no appeals are received, then a further notice will be sent out indicating that the decisions are in force and effect. There are some timelines under the Planning Act that have been suspended during the provincial emergency period. These include timelines such as appeal of non-decisions related to things like official plan amendments and plans of subdivision. And what this allows is municipalities to put a pause on land use planning matters if they choose to do so, without risk of appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal, in order to further support municipal emergency response activities. However, municipalities do have the option to continue to process planning applications during the pandemic. And county staff are recommending that the county continue to process both new and active planning applications during the provincial emergency period. We have been doing this since day one, and we recommend that we continue to do so with some further changes to our regular process, which I'll highlight in a little bit. County staff recommend this approach in order to avoid any potential backlog with applications, as well as to also help with the economic recovery period to ensure that developments have the approvals in place and are ready to go following the pandemic period. Although the regulation did not provide details regarding how municipalities can conduct public meetings during the pandemic, the minister's letter that was sent out to municipalities on April 9th, as well as the bulletin released by the province, does note that municipalities can consider using electronic and virtual channels to engage the public on land use planning matters. So based on this new regulation, county staff have outlined in the report some changes to our regular process in order to continue to process applications during this time. And for the most part, the process will primarily be the same, with some changes in order to keep both members of the public, council members, and staff safe during the pandemic period. And during the emergency period, the county will accept electronic application submissions. So this is one change that we've made. This will limit any incoming mail, which could be a potential conduit for spreading the virus, and also limits the need for staff to go into the office to retrieve mail. Prior to the pandemic, the county significantly reduced the number of paper copies for studies and plans, and in most cases, we were only requesting one paper copy. So this is a slight adjustment to what we've previously done, in that we're just accepting electronic application submissions now during this process. And we want to explore this further to see if we can support full electronic submissions following the pandemic period as well, because we've actually heard some positive comments about not requiring lots of paper copies for plans and studies. Applications will still need to be commissioned, and it's recommended that applicants engage a lawyer or paralegal to see if they offer virtual commissioning services, as currently county municipal staff are not available to commission those applications with offices being closed. And there were recent changes made by the province that allow lawyers and paralegals to offer these services. Another change that we have put in place, and we've actually been working on this for a little while, are that all applications will now be tracked through the county's new planning application tracking system. And this is a system that we've been working with our county IT staff to create. And we've been using this over the past few weeks, and it's working fantastic. And this new system allows staff to quickly see the status of an application, which will help us to manage planning applications while continuing to work from home. There are plans to create a public version that would provide an updated status of applications on the county website as well. And we will work with IT staff to further develop that public version as a further way to just engage the public. With respect to application fees, these can be provided through credit card payment or can still be mailed via check. And this again has been working well since the office has been closed. Probably the biggest change from our regular process that we're proposing is holding virtual public meetings. And county staff are proposing that all public meetings during the provincial emergency period will be held using Zoom. County staff are familiar with Zoom, as this is a platform we've been utilizing for things like council and committee of the whole meetings. And Zoom provides the features and functions that we need to ensure that public meetings will run as smooth as possible. In order to ensure that public meetings are as secure as possible and to avoid, I think, what people are calling the Zoom bombers, we will require members of the public to pre-register for the public meeting. And following pre-registration, a link or a phone number would then be sent to the member of the public, and that will allow them to connect either through a computer, smartphone, or home phone to join in on the public meeting. If a member of the public does not have a computer or smartphone to pre-register, they can contact staff via phone, and we will provide them with a phone number to connect to the meeting. Staff are investigating options for recording electronic public meetings while ensuring that accessibility requirements can be met. And if the public meetings are recorded, they will be posted on the county website. And of course, approved minutes from the public meeting will also be posted on the county website, just as another way, again, for people to get information about what was discussed during that public meeting. Members of the public can also continue to provide any comments or questions via email or mail. The public will be encouraged to submit written comments via email where possible. And members of the public can also provide comments by leaving a voice message. And if that's done prior to the public meeting, we'll record those and summarize those comments received and provide those at the public meeting as well. For developments that require both a county official plan amendment and a local application, such as a zoning amendment, staff normally try to work with local municipalities to hold a joint public meeting. So if a municipality is continuing to process applications during the pandemic and is willing to move forward with electronic public meetings, a joint public meeting could still be considered and can be hosted by either the county or the local municipality. And we would work with local municipal staff to arrange that. Should a municipality decide to put a pause on planning applications during the pandemic, the county may continue to proceed with the public meeting for the county application only. And this will be reviewed on an application by application basis and in consultation with the local municipality and the applicant. Public meetings for county official plan amendments have been delegated to the chair of the committee of the whole or designate and to the director of planning or designate. As such, only the chair and planning staff and a single planning staff person need to host and attend the public meeting for a county official plan amendment. For public meetings related to plans of subdivisions and condominium, the county has previously delegated these to local municipalities. So if a local municipality is putting a pause on planning matters or is not wanting to hold electronic public meetings during the pandemic period, the county may need to revise the delegation bylaw. Our preference is to not revise the delegation bylaw and instead work with local municipal staff to assess this on an application by application basis. So with the adjustments to the planning process as outlined, county staff are satisfied that the county is meeting the intent of the Planning Act while ensuring that provincial orders such as physical distancing and public gathering restrictions are being adhered to. This will allow planning applications to continue to avoid that potential backlog, as I mentioned, as well as to help with local economic recovery. In speaking with local municipal planners, most municipalities at this stage are planning to continue to process new and active planning applications, and some are also exploring the option of holding electronic public meetings, which is great. And I'd be happy to take any questions if there are any.
Well, thank you very much for that great explanation of your planning report. And I have Councillor Millen, I think, first on the list. Go ahead, Councillor Millen.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Randy, very comprehensive report, a lot in there. Just a question that comes to mind is, do you think there is potential that once the pandemic is over, or at least manageable, and we go back to some semblance of normal, do you think there's an opportunity to use virtual meetings, virtual public meetings in the long term to alleviate the issues of distance, weather, that kind of thing?
Randy?
Through you, Mr. Warden, I think it's a great point, and I think that's something that we have been discussing. We think there's definitely benefits to having virtual public meetings, and we hope that that can be a continued practice even post-pandemic. You know, some of the concerns we've heard in the past for public meetings is, you know, I wasn't able to attend because I had to work maybe during that time, or I wasn't able to attend because I'm a resident and I wasn't at my cottage at that time, or my seasonal residence. And so some of that I think will benefit if we have and continue electronic virtual public meetings. So that's something that I know that county staff are definitely interested in exploring further. And maybe it's a combination where we, pandemic, that we can offer both a public gathering setting for those that want to come and be in person, but also maybe still allow people to connect virtually. So that's something that I think we should explore. To me, I think it's an added benefit to those that are unable to attend, may not have access to a vehicle or a car. There's other reasons as to why I think it's important to be able to expand on this. And this is just one, I think, element where, you know, things, there's positives, changes that are coming. And this is just an example of this in terms of trying to adapt and having initiative to look at different processes for being able to continue business during the pandemic. But I think we'll be able to learn some lessons through that and be able to continue some of those practices in a post-pandemic period.
Thank you, Randy. And just to be clear, I wasn't suggesting that I don't enjoy your company or any of the company of the rest of the planning staff. I just thought maybe an opportunity to further engage people going forward.
For sure.
I took that perfectly the way you had described it, Councillor Mellon. Absolutely. It could be the new normal, and it could be the way to enhance our service going forward in a better way, for sure.
For sure.
Other comments out there, Madam Clerk, anything?
I think Councillor Robinson is interested in making a comment.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, and through you, Warden McQueen. Randy, excellent report. Thank you very much. What I'm very pleased with is the advancement for citizen participation and business continuity during the pandemic, and options that are available afterwards, just to improve the planning process. I was wondering if there was any consideration of the consultation time that staff would provide to individuals that are interested in planning, and the information that needs to be conveyed through the county. So prior to the whole planning application process, if a citizen was interested in receiving additional information, is that also available electronically?
Yes, all documents are associated with an application are posted on our county website today. And part of the new planning application tracking system that I mentioned earlier, we're hoping that more documents and more information will be available through that public version portal that I mentioned. So again, that's something that we're going to be working on with IT staff. And we think that there'll be just more information, more opportunities for engagement and information for citizen engagement.
Mr. Warden?
Go ahead.
I was just wondering, in terms of meeting with citizens, would you have the ability to meet with citizens electronically if they had questions with regard to their planning application?
For sure, and we've been, whether it's through email or through virtual means or through calls, we've been having a lot of those discussions with folks, whether it be developers or even members of the public that have questions about particular development proposals. So we've been doing that since day one, since March 16th, I guess, since all the planning staff have been working from home. So we've been using some of these channels to continue those conversations and discussions, and it's working really well for staff.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Robinson. Any further questions to Randy's report? Yeah, it could take us into a new norm, and certainly very important for us to have higher speed internet for everyone to use this.
Absolutely.
Sure. Okay, so I don't see any more comments. Again, this was moved by Councillor Mackey and second by Councillor Hicks. And is there any last comments, further comments? Anybody opposed to this report? Seeing none, I deem it carried. So that takes care of the reports. Madam Clerk, do you want us to go in closed session, or do we go back to the points that were pulled from the consent?
We'll go back to the consent items that were pulled. So the first one was the lease, find my page, lease financing report. And once it's moved and seconded, Mary Lou Spicer, our Deputy Treasurer, is here to speak to that.
Okay, then I need a mover and a seconder, please. And maybe help me out here. I'm going to swipe my screen if I see anybody. Okay, I see Councillor Desai and Councillor Carleton. It is on the floor then. So Mary Lou, would you like to speak to this, please?
Mary Lou, oh, there you go.
Yeah, I'm here. So the reason this report is here is to comply with the ministry regulation where we have to disclose any leases, whether they're capital or operating in nature. So there's an attached spreadsheet that shows all the lease arrangements that were in effect at December 31st, 2019. And so you'll see that we have 5 paramedic services leases, 3 member municipalities that are all current in nature, and we have 2 with hospitals that are expired in 2008 and 2009. And I guess the comment I'll make to that is that isn't for lack of effort on staff and paramedic services department and trying to renew these leases. And quite honestly, we just haven't received a response. So we continue to operate under the lease that was in effect, and they've had no increases in the lease payments since what was being paid in 2008 and 2009. Social Services has 2 small leases for space in Hanover and Dundalk. Provincial Offenses, we pay to County of Bruce for the Walkerton Court. We have a postage machine here at the county building. And we have a parking lot rental for Golden Town, which we acquired from the nonprofit in 2018. And then the others are long-term debt, where we have the grant to Georgian College and the mortgages that we acquired as a result of taking over Golden Town. So we have total long-term debt of just under $4 million, and there is no portion of that belonging to capital leases. And then the other lease agreement we have is with Blue Mountains. It was a 99-year lease where we built the paramedic services station at Craigleith.
Yeah, I think that one might outlive us all.
I think so.
So,
Okay,
Mr.
thanks.
Gordon, it was Councillor Soever who requested this item be pulled, so I wonder if he has some comments.
Yeah, I was going to go there right next. Thank you for that, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Mary Lou. Councillor Soever.
Yes, as the same as last year, I'm still concerned. There's 2 leases that expired over 10 years ago and are showing as ending on it's the Grey Bruce Health Services paramedic station Meaford, which lease end date shows as December 31st, 2008. And then there's the South Bruce Grey Health Center Paramedic Services Station Durham, which shows as a lease expiring on December 31st, 2009. So I'm wondering, it's a housekeeping matter, but I did raise this last year, so I'm surprised that it wasn't taken care of.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Soever. Mary Lou, do you have any comments to that?
Sure. And yes, I do recall that you raised it last year. And again, through no lack of effort on county staff, we've just had no response. The only response we've had recently is Grey Bruce Health Services reached out and wanted to charge for paramedic staff parking. And they brought that up probably 10 years ago. And the response has been that, well, then let's negotiate the lease then.
Okay, well, maybe
My only
if we don't,
they have bigger
if we
fish to
don't
fry.
pay, if we don't pay since the lease is expired, maybe they'll renegotiate.
Yeah. So Mary Lou, did you have another comment there? That sometimes works that way, Councillor.
Well, coincidentally, Grey Bruce Health Services has advised us for the Meaford location that they're not going to be charging us rent during this time period.
Okay, very good.
That's good to know then. Any further comments from staff at all on that? Any follow up on that, Councillor Soever?
No, I just like to see the I's dotted and the T's crossed.
Right. Okay, my clock's going off. So any further comments from anybody? Okay, seeing that I'm trying to eliminate my clock here. Must be lunchtime. Okay, so that motion is on the floor. It's moved by Councillor Desai, second by Councillor Carlton. Are there any opposed to that report? Seeing none, that is carried. Moving on then to the next one, Madam Clerk, was it F? H. And this was
the development charges.
for the development charge reserve fund statement. And I need a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Robinson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Burley. Sorry, Tom. I'll try to get you in there. So that's on the floor. And who would like to look at this report here? Leasing finance, is that to you, Mr. Ruppler?
Yeah, this was the one I wrote. So
okay,
this is the annual report that I am to provide council on the development charges to demonstrate how much has been collected and how the development charges funding has been used. And as council receives this, we place these up on the website. So just the revenue collected was very similar to 2018, just over $4 million, and we expensed about 2.2 million in 2019, and so we're sitting with a development charge reserve balance around about $10 million. So, and mainly this is about 92% of our development charges is for roads and related.
Right. Yeah, it's all broken down in a schedule there, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that, Kevin. Councillor Sweber, you had pulled this, so do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, certainly. The issue that our ratepayers raised, and I thank Kevin for putting that in his report, that they are concerned, is that, you know, a lion's share is collected in the town of Blue Mountains and relatively little is spent there. And if you look at this summary, countywide over the last few years, the period covered in the report, 15 million was 0.9 million was collected and 9.2 million was spent. So about 58% of what was collected was spent countywide. Now, if you look at the town of Blue Mountains portion, 6 million was collected and 1 million was spent in the town of the Blue Mountains. If you do that by taking 1/9 of the countywide thing, so just looking at that, that works out to only 16%. So only 16% of what was collected in the town of Blue Mountains was spent in the town of Blue Mountains, where countywide, the percentage of development charges collected over the last few years, from I think it's 2015 to 2019, 58% was spent. So there seems like, you know, the county is spending development charges, but the Blue Mountains is the fastest growing part of the county, and to only have 1 million of the 16 million spent here, when it's, you know, 6 million was collected here, seems to be that this is just a shift to other parts. And certainly we do have needs, and I recognize some things are on the books to be built, like the roundabout at 19 and 21, but that seems to be pushed back all the time. And that's really why our ratepayers are upset, is that, you know, there are transportation needs here, and the development charges have been collected, but they're not being spent.
Okay, well, thank you for those comments. Maybe I'll go first, maybe to you, Kevin, and maybe the CAO, or maybe Patrick. Go ahead, Kevin, do you have any comments to that?
Yeah, when it comes to the timing of the projects that are in the background study, I guess I'd leave that more to Pat to speak to. But you know, the projects we are spending money were identified in the background study, and when those projects, due to the timing or the road need, comes up, these funds are being used. So I do hear what you're saying, and I'm not arguing the facts. But I think it's just the timing. Some of these bigger projects that are listed in that background study just have not moved forward yet in the Blue Mountains. So maybe Pat or Kim wants to comment.
Okay, I'll go maybe to Madam CEO or Director of Transportation. Who would like to speak?
Pat is very familiar with the details around the upcoming significant projects in town of Blue Mountains. So I think it would be best if Pat provided a bit of an update to council on what's going on there.
Mr. Hoy, how are you today?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Warden. Yeah, the two jobs we're doing in Blue Mountain this year are $2.7 million in levy, so they're not, they weren't DC jobs. So going all the way back to 2011, one of the categories of the development charge bylaw was changing service treated roads to hot mix. So just by the nature of those jobs, they kind of had to happen in the first, the first quarter, first 7 or 8 years of the development charges. So as far as 19 and 21, just to give you an update, it's at 90% design stage. It's with the utilities right now to do their design. And the other job is the 4-laning of 19 between 21 and 119. So it's, we were doing some surveying this week and we're designing it right now. So those two jobs in 2022 and 2023 are right now, it looks like they're going to be using $5.2 million of development charges. And in addition to $9.6 million of Grey County levy. So as soon as that, by the end of 2023, if those two jobs are both completed, then, there we are back to using quite a bit of the development charge money in Blue Mountain. And just to mention again, we look at the network as a whole. Because these jobs are so complicated, they probably should have gone by now. They haven't gone as smoothly in the design as we would have hoped. But we are working towards getting them done, and we're going to get them done, and they need to get done, and that's why they're in the development charges bylaw in the first place. So that's not even including the 21 4-laning, which will probably happen towards the end of the development charge period around 2029 or 2030. So there is a lot of big projects coming.
Okay, thank you for that. Councilor Schweber, do you have a follow-up to that, or is that help communicate that information? You're on mute there, Councilor Schweber.
Thank you, Pat, and I will relay that to our ratepayers because they're always on this issue, and I thank Kevin for recognizing them in his report. It will kind of smooth things over here a little bit.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you, and thanks for everyone for explaining it. Sometimes it's all in the details. All right, so again, that report was moved by Councilor Robinson, second Councilor Burley. Any further discussion on that development charge reserve fund statement? Okay, seeing none. Any opposed to that resolution? Hearing none, that is carried. All right, Madam Clerk, then moving on into the later part of our agenda, we have a closed meeting matter or matters. And I have that to go into closed session. I have it moved by Councilor Burley and second by Councilor Millen, and that's to the two items that are described as litigation or the potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and it's under a land claim. And secondly, advice subject to solicitor or client privilege, including communications necessary for the purpose, and it's under land claim. So, so then is anybody opposed to that motion? Seeing none, that motion is carried. So now we're going into closed session. Rob, you have to do your due.
To Rob to let us know when he's ready to go.
We're just up and running, Mr. Warden.
Okay.
All right.
Yep, we're good.
A few minutes, few seconds there. All right, welcome back everyone. And we're now back in open session. And the items that were listed for us going into closed session were discussed, and only those items were discussed. And now that we are back in open session, is there any other business from county councilors? Any other business? Madam Clerk, anything? Okay. Are there any notices of motions that wish to be raised today? Councilor Robinson.
Yes, thank you. I do have, through you, Mr. Warden, I do have a question for the clerk and then a follow-up, if I might.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And that is, Clerk Morrison, is it necessary to submit the full notice of motion to you at this time, or are we looking at the intent of the notice of motion to be presented on the next agenda?
So you can just state your intent today of what the notice of motion will be surrounding, and then between yourself and clerk staff, we will work with you on a notice of motion in preparation for the next agenda.
Thank you. Then I do have a notice of motion, and that is that Grey County Council strongly advocate to the province and federal government on behalf of Grey County residents and business sectors for broadband infrastructure for Grey County. So that's the gist of what I would be presenting. Thank you.
So just for clarity on that, broadband or to improve broadband? Just
Mr. Warden, it's for broadband in general, but it is the enhancement and certainly bringing the infrastructure, the appropriate infrastructure to Grey County. Thank you.
Thank you. I wasn't trying to open debate. I just wanted to get clarity on your notice of motion.
For certain.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Are there any other notices of motions from county councilors?
Councillor Soever.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Soever. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Yes, as we go through this COVID crisis, there seems to be divisions created in our community and in other communities as well. And over the, not this weekend, but the weekend before, the Muskoka mayors and the district chair sent out a letter to all the residents, reminding them that they're all our residents, both year-round and seasonal, are valued and recognized, that, you know, now is not the time for divisive attitudes and propagation of negative us versus them comments. So I will be bringing a notice of motion that Grey County issue a similar letter to all its residents, reminding them that we're all in this together, and reminding them that we all need to follow social distancing and self-isolation, because what we're finding here with our bylaw department, they've been actually going and knocking on people's doors when they see more than 4 cars in the driveway. And certainly the infractions are not limited to seasonal residents yet. There's just as many permanent residents that are inviting people up, and in cases to have birthday parties and things. When you see balloons on a mailbox and 7 cars in the driveway, that is a very dangerous activity taking place. So I just think that maybe it's time for us as leaders to send out a letter to everybody that, you know, we're all in this together, and you know, everybody has to act responsibly.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any other notice of motions from county councilors? Madam Clerk, there was some correspondence that's been circulated around, and I'm not sure if it needs to be a notice of motion to address it. It's with regards to an amendment to the Niagara Escarpment Plan with regards to Side Road 2627. And I know we were having regional discussions around transportation, and the comment period is as of June 8th. So in process, I don't know if you need a notice of motion to bring back a report or a comment or further information, or we just can add that communication letter to the next council agenda. Maybe I'll seek your guidance on that.
I think in discussions with the CAO, I think that letter is going to be added to the next agenda. Am I correct, Kim?
Okay, I'll leave it at that then, and then we can sort of pull something out from there from that communication. Very, very, very much thank you for that. Okay, so seeing there's no other notices of motion, I do have one more motion to present to County Council, and that is a motion to adjourn. And that is moved by Councillor Burley and Councillor Mackey, and Councillor Burley, you're in there again. So seeing there's no really discussion on adjournment, any opposed to the adjournment? Hearing none, that is carried. So thank you very much, County Council, and thank you from the viewing public for being part of this today. As you're quite aware, this is part of the new norm is COVID-19, and as we move forward this together, and I will tell everybody to please be safe and do all the respectable social distancing you need to do. And again, we move forward in this new reality of what 2020 has turned out to be. And they say it is the year of the nurse. So what a year to be year of the nurse, I tell you. And a big shout out again to those frontline workers. So again, have a safe day, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you at our next county council meeting. Thank you.